Good morning. Welcome to Our Neutral Voices Presents A Financial Pillar. Your host, Ryan Leopard, and it's good to be back with you. It's been way too long since we've been on set. But joining me today, Mr. Fort Wayne, JJ Foster.
Hey, good to see you. Welcome back. I'm good to be back myself. Happy Juneteenth, everybody out there.
Thank you. DR Financial, Chris Hannes. First time you've been on set with us this year, right?
Yeah, we finally made it out of tax season alive, so
Nice.
we're here.
Good. It's good to see you made it through.
Thank you.
And then we have Mr. Intern, Callan Wood. Callan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm going to be a senior here at the University of St. Francis in town. I've grown up in Fort Wayne, went to Blackhawk Christian, and yeah, I'm excited to be a part of Chris's company.
So you're interning for Chris right now?
Correct. Yep. I went to high school with some of his kids, so I've known his family for a long time, and I'm excited to get the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, it's always good having those relationships and get you in for something like that, right?
Yes, and he's doing a great job. So
Yeah. I understood you played basketball.
Correct. Yep. I play baseball currently at St. Francis,
Oh, do
but
you?
in high school I played basketball and baseball. Played against some of JJ's teams at Southside.
Awesome. Who won?
I believe we did. We had a pretty
Did
good
you?
squad those couple years.
JJ, what's your thoughts on that? You agree?
He played for a legendary coach, state champion, played with a great player, Mr. Basketball. A lot of people probably know the name of Caleb First, who's at Purdue right now. So, yeah, great team.
That's what I was wondering. Okay. Awesome. So today we have a holiday, it's a very special day, Juneteenth. Okay. So happy Juneteenth to all of you, if that's the appropriate thing to say. I don't know.
Hey, that works.
Yeah.
That works.
But I gotta admit that I know probably very little about Juneteenth. My first recollection or hearing of the term came a few years ago when I was at my job, and they came out with an announcement, I think through email, just saying, hey, in 2 days or however long it was, because it wasn't well planned out. A couple days we got a half day. We were like, what do we have a half day for? Right? It's Juneteenth. Juneteenth, what is that? Right? So beyond, the little bit of information that I know of is obviously it was, Lincoln freed the slaves in
63.
But it took a couple years for it to reach a couple states or state of Texas or whatever for all the slaves to be freed, right?
Yeah, they didn't have Fox News or CNN back then, so it took a while for it to get out.
Or Facebook or Instagram
Facebook or
anything like that, right?
Yeah,
So
well said.
yeah. JJ, I know you got some information on that. Fill us in on the dates. Kind of what is your knowledge of Juneteenth?
Yeah, just like you said, 1863, slaves were freed. You thought, hey, it should have been a happy celebration. Wasn't until 1865, 2 years later, that Union troops actually had to go into Texas and basically free slaves that were already free at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So hence Juneteenth.
Juneteenth. Yeah. So
June
isn't that
19th, correct.
ironic in the history of our country, and happens at one point in time where the law is passed, but yet it takes a couple of years for everybody to get on board with it.
There you go. And that's
Right.
what I said. As elders always say, it's kind of indicative of the way things have gone in society, for African Americans, that something comes about, and it's not till later the trickle down effect that they actually benefit from, what is taking place.
Gotcha. So obviously in my world, it wasn't anything I've been aware of until I think 2021 is when it became a federal holiday. President Biden passed that. But is this a holiday that's been celebrated, well before that in the African American community, or is this something new to everybody?
You know what? I mean, it's relatively new to everybody, unless somebody is into Black history. We have people that go above and beyond. And it's funny because I'll say in our community, we had Carl Johnson, which changed his name to Kwaku. He was the first that I heard talking about Juneteenth and doing something. He had his own celebrations, and people kind of, didn't know what was going on. I grew up in a home where, my family always educated us on, you can call it Black history, but it's history. And so I always knew a little bit what was going on. But as far as Juneteenth, just like you said, you didn't know a lot. African Americans were just as had to be educated on the holiday as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, we only know what they teach us in school, right? Right. And I brought my daughter with us today, who's sitting back in the production room over there. And on the way here, I kind of told her what the topic was going to be on Juneteenth. Said, Dad, what's that? And I thought to myself, like, well, I guess, yeah, she probably doesn't know about that because the holiday falls during summer break. They're probably not talking about that in school or teaching that like they would MLK Day, because it falls during the school season. So a lot of kids are growing up and they still don't have that knowledge, right? of
Yeah.
what the holiday is.
Yeah, but then the current climate that we're in, you have schools in certain states doing away with all that discussion. They don't want any talks of the past, slavery, racial. They calling it, racial divide, basically. But so that's one of the reasons these things do need to stay in, because it is a part of our history. Whether you like it or not, I guess.
Absolutely.
It's history.
Yeah. So obviously, this being a financial show, how can we tie Juneteenth and the holiday and the freedom that came from that into the financial show?
Yeah, one of the things when we talked about doing this show, I thought about that. We're looking at 159 years of basically freedom, and so when we talk about financial freedom, let's look at this systematically. 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed. That essentially did away with slavery. So you do away with slavery, 1865. It was 4 million slaves that were released with no resources, no protections, no policies put in place. What do they do? So they were still tied with not necessarily their slave owners, but they were tied to systems and mechanisms that were unfair practices, sharecropping, where you worked a part of somebody's land, they charged you what they wanted. People weren't making money from that, just was a very unequitable system. But even through that, you had some, African Americans actually made it through, were able to save up money and purchase their own land. And the killer, when I say save up money, it'd be like you own the land and you say, hey, JJ, you're going to work this land. I get 70% of the profits, you get 30. And there's people that made that work and were able to come out, but it's still a large majority were still, weren't slaves, but they were slaves to the system. Other mechanisms that were put in place was, redlining. So again, on this show, we're talking financing, purchasing homes and things. Redlining goes on to this day. And, we talked offset. There's some banks, that have gotten in trouble with some of these practices.
So real quick for the general public that probably has no idea what redlining is. What is redlining?
Redlining is where banks basically force blacks into urban areas. And again, back in those periods, you're talking, say 1930s, force blacks into urban areas, and whites they sent out to the suburbs. They wouldn't give funding to anybody. You wouldn't do mortgages to urban areas or populations that were primarily African American. So there would be no mortgages. They sent all their financing and stuff to white subsidized developments. And, they also, on the maps, they put it in red, areas that they viewed as
So literally redlining is from the red line.
Correct. Right? They were considered high-risk mortgage areas.
Yep. Okay, so slaves are freed, but we fast forward to the 1930s, 1940s, wherever, but we still don't have segregation still exists, right? That's kind of what we're talking about, the redlining.
Yeah.
Putting over here, we're not providing loans, the things to make you equal opportunity economically wise, right? Yeah. So then CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, right?
Correct.
What do we know about the Community Reinvestment Act?
CRA, and again, what I tell people, again, if you have discussions with some people that you want to tell you, racism doesn't exist, or, things are fair. I don't know what people are talking about. No, CRA literally exists because mechanisms were put in place to suppress a race of people. So what the federal government has done, stuff like CRA, make sure that banks are lending fairly, serving all communities equally and equitably. So that's, in a nutshell, what CRA is. You get credits. Banks get certain credits for, focusing on majority, minority census tracts, going into areas that people are, pulling out of, that are being depleted. So if you want to come in and, do development, if you want to assure getting folks mortgages from these areas, banks, there's a grading system that banks use to make sure you're doing it, so you should be doing it. And if you're not doing it, there are sanctions. If they prove that you are still steering or not loaning or lending to a certain segment of the community, there are sanctions and penalties that can take place.
Gotcha. So the Community Reinvestment Act is there to ensure that banking financial institutions are offering equal opportunity to the communities that they serve.
Correct.
Right.
That's
Right.
exactly right.
Yep. Chris, you got anything to add or questions for JJ?
I think it's important to talk about that freedom and how not only it's a freedom for your life, but like we talked about earlier, leading into financial freedom. I mean, I think the CRA is very important because, a community is healthy as a whole if all of it is healthy and not just certain quadrants or areas. And being a financial professional, my job is to help people grow their businesses, pay less in taxes, put money away for retirement. I want to do that for anybody and everybody in the community because that creates a better community for me to live in. And I think having a well-rounded community is what has made Fort Wayne keep moving forward the last few years. And there's been a lot of efforts, so it's in the Southeast, to really bring in some investment to help get that part of the community to where it should be and not left behind because we need a strong community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe, home ownership is one of the biggest financial freedoms, even though most of us have a mortgage on it and owe money on it. Just having that power, knowing that this is my home, this is my land, this is my property, this is what I own. But, if a certain segment of the community is not getting that opportunity, they're being oppressed, as JJ said earlier, right? We're not getting the same opportunity. So Lincoln can free the slaves all you want, but if you don't have the same opportunities as another segment of the community, right, it's always going to keep you down.
And to your point of home ownership, I'll tell you this. The biggest contributor to the wealth gap that exists between blacks and whites is home ownership. And if you think about, just like what I said, blacks weren't afforded opportunity to even get mortgages. You had to, they were forced to pay rent, these high rents. So they missed out on it. And, a little known fact too, people don't know about is the GI Bill. Everybody knows what the GI Bill. You go, get in the military, you get, special rates for homes, education paid for. Now, when blacks went, were in the war, they came back, they weren't afforded the same opportunities. So again, just like you said, your grandfather, they had their home, they got all that equity, the house is paid for. So when you come along, probably paid for you to go to college and everything. House is in your family. That's money. You can do whatever you want. Like you said, that equity, if you wanted to sell that house, that's yours. Do whatever you want. Black GIs came back. They weren't allowed in these neighborhoods. Again, that redlining, they weren't allowed. There was a place that they built, and I want to say in New York, but it's called Levittown. All new appliances, just standard homes, just state-of-the-art homes back then. So black GIs went out. They thought that they were going to be afforded homes in Levittown. Turned away. They were told they could not buy there. They had to go live in tenements and things of that nature. Whereas, white GIs came. We're talking, soldiers, millions. And again, you think about where that put them in history. But the African Americans weren't allowed. But to your point, what if they had two Levittowns? If they want to do that, if you're gonna keep it black and white, why not two Levittowns? These people, same income. You talk about thriving. Instead, you turn one group away. You allow them to live here, and you turn another group away and force them into subpar living.
Yeah, very interesting. Callan, put you on the spot here. Juneteenth, from you, being somebody that's closer to the school system now, a younger age, what's your knowledge of it? I mean, was this anything that they taught you that you've learned in school, or?
Like you said, it's a pretty recent thing for all of us. So, having graduated high school in 2021, I don't take any more history classes or anything like that in college. So I think learning the history and the background of everything is not something that's focused on as much. With my major in colleges now, they do more events and focusing on it outside of the classroom, but not so much in the classroom. However, I do think one thing that has helped out much is our the advances in technology and social media, and I think it's a lot easier for more people to gain awareness and a better understanding of the whole thing.
Absolutely. Right. Yep, absolutely. So, going back to the financial side of things with Juneteenth, the opportunities that it's given, right, to to people nowadays. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought with it. Yeah.
Why you
Just jump in.
Why you
Sorry.
waiting on your train of thought?
Yep.
Another avenue I like to say is, again, a lot of times when blacks would show progress, as we talked about through these periods. We're all familiar with Black Wall Street, or if we're not, and the Tulsa massacre. I think it is the worst massacre that ever occurred on American soil, but blacks basically started their own town, their own Wall Street. The big and you were talking stock market, insurance companies, own postal service, everything thriving. But the white counterparts didn't like that. It came and just massacred thousands of people. Prior to that, I talk about GIs coming back, World War I. Black GIs were coming back. It scared the crap out of white Americans. Armed Negroes are going to take things over, this, that, the other. They literally started riots. It was known as the Red Summer. And
when was this?
This would have been look, I got notes.
Yeah, nah.
1919. So that would have been 2 years before Tulsa. So right after World War I. And if you ever get a chance, Florida has different museums. And I've been down there and I saw it. And you want to talk about some depressing stuff, but literally lynching. There was like 97 lynchings throughout the country, and they were lynching black soldiers in their uniforms. Mm-hmm. All because of just fear. Talking, like I said, they were armed and just out of, I'm gonna say, ignorance and fear that they were gonna come back and gonna take over. So when we talk about again tying this into to financial. What I say right now is, in our 159 years of freedom, we do have opportunity. It's probably, the best place that we can be in as African Americans. And, with shows like this, take advantage to all the knowledge and information that's out there and, make sure that you are doing better.
Yeah, so that actually brought me back to what my question was getting to there was the knowledge, right? We talk about like renting versus owning. Is that something that's common knowledge in the African American community when it comes to home ownership, right? And how that leads to financial freedom, understanding equity in ownership as opposed to renting, right?
No, it wasn't. But I say, now again with shows like ours, with banks going out doing different counseling services or workshops and whatnot. I have seen our community a lot more educated than they have been. When I go out now and do workshops, I hear people telling me, they need to put down 20%. Why do you need 20%? You don't need 20%. Why 20%? But it's funny because I always chuckle to myself. That lets me know if they've had training somewhere else. 20%, that means I don't have to worry about PMI.
Yep.
Now, where before, about PMI.
Private mortgage insurance.
Yes. But yes, we are a lot more educated. But prior to that, no. I mean, you have people, A, like I said, we're forced into renting. B, just had no idea about equity.
When you say forced into renting, how are they being forced?
There was like when you go back, if I'm not going to give you a mortgage as a lender, but I'm going to give you a loan, what are your options? If I'm giving you a mortgage, you're going to rent from somebody, and for years that was the case with African Americans, and I ain't gonna say for years because again, there's certain times, like I said, you can go check the records right now. There are some banks that have been dinged for redlining. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking, I'm not talking 1830. I'm talking about
today.
Yeah, we're talking about the 2000s. Go ahead. I mean, it's in there. So that's the type of stuff. So whether it's overtly forced or systematically forced, you get somebody say you're moving in. I joke about this. Well, I don't joke because I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is, we talk about, hey, I'm a South Side. And people talk about my players and, who I lose and all this stuff. And I said, I'm a guy that understands how things work. you get somebody moved into Fort Wayne, and they say, "Hey, I got a family I want to raise. What's a good school system? What's the neighborhoods I want to live in? Where they gonna direct them to? Southwest, Northwest, right? Ain't nobody gonna say, hey, yeah, I got a house over here on Pontiac Street. You know, they're not gonna promote that. So that's what you got to understand too. But on the flip side, you may get a family, and a realtor or somebody may say, hey, just off the color of somebody's skin, they may say, hey, I got a house over here for you, and only show them houses in certain areas and neighborhoods. So again, that's what I'm talking about. You know, unless you've done your homework. You know, like what Callie said. You know, with the internet and things, you know, people are, you know, you can pick up, do your own little homework, do your research, and people start to understand and realize they have rights. But I get people, you know, as you say, I know people all walks of life, and there's people that'll get moved here, and they'll tell me about where they showed them houses at, and you know what homes, and it's like, yeah.
So without asking, like.
Correct, without asking, or they, you know, just come in. They look at them. You know, if you come in and say, "Hey, I got my family," look, and they show them houses over in Crown Colony and over, you know, on the south side of town, just based off of what they look like. So,
where do you think that mentality comes from? I mean, do you think it's putting them in a position where they might feel more comfortable, right? Because they're around people that look like them, or do you think it is truly?
Well, first thing you would do is I think I'm gonna ask, where are you at? Who are you more comfortable with? But if somebody walks in and just literally says, "Hey, I want to buy a home," and you take it upon yourself to show them homes only in a certain area, you tell me where does it come from? I mean, what is the only assumption that you can make? You know, because otherwise, if somebody walks into my office as a realtor. You know, I'm gonna ask what kind of income you have first off, and okay, this is your income. These are the houses you can afford it over here, over there. Give them all the areas where homes are in that price range.
Gotcha. So, I would love to hear your knowledge on the southeast side of town. There's a lot of talk about a lot of housing opportunities and investments in the community and things like that going on. What are any of those projects you're familiar with that you can talk to us about?
Familiar with all of them, actually. And it's funny. And actually, I think we posted some stuff. We just did a seminar. You know, I'm a part of a group called Realtors Association of Northeast Indiana. Just facilitated that workshop. We brought on Jerry Starks from JM Realty. He's got the development that's going on out south, is doing affordable housing. We brought in a group that's managing.
Could you get him on here? Talk to us.
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
That's an easy ask.
Uh-huh.
Easy ask. And really, what I did, I brought him on, and it's escaping me. Trust you know, we're in the morning. But a group out of Indianapolis is actually doing the other development next to Prosperity Village on Anthony and McKinney. So brought them on just to explain where they're at in their in the process of their project, what it takes to get into the you know, their properties. You know, Linda Golden, big time developer on the southeast side, realtor, you know, just built her office out there next to Menards. She's got things going on. Fort Wayne Housing Authority is going to be doing a development. So it's always things going on. And it's funny that you said that, because that is a hot topic with me. And I've actually have been in talks. And when I leave here, that's my tour I'm going on, because the city has recognized we have to do something to as far as affordable housing. You know, there's a study done. Average income on the south side of town is $29,000. So for $29,000, you know, that's you know, times that by 3, that's under, you know, 100,000. They're not building any homes less than 200,000. So something's got to give. There's going to have to be some subsidies, some concessions being made. You know, a lot of banks doing things with down payment assistance. I think the city is going to have to step in. Somebody's going to have to step in when we talk about home ownership, because I don't care what your credit score is. You know, if you're making 40,000, which is,
If you can't afford the monthly payment on it, then
there you go.
Yeah.
The debt to income is
we're gonna be like California, where there's gonna be multiple families living in one home, right?
Correct.
Family members, generations living together to be able to afford the mortgage.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
And just to add, you know, that's why I like supporting like Habitat for Humanity. Been involved with them. My wife used to work there before her present job. I'm still friends with the current CEO there, and you know they're looking at all parts of Fort Wayne to get involved in, but I know they're really concentrating on the southeast side. And, you know, it frustrates me when I drive by southeast sometimes and there's lots of vacant lots. And it's like, you know, we need to find some way to get those lots homes. And either the people that own those properties need to step forward and do something with them, or, you know, there's a spot where you can put brand new houses on for people and work on making them affordable.
They're buying farmland,
Right?
Down, building brand new additions and housing. So the need for housing and land is there.
Yeah.
It's available over here.
Correct.
Right. So it's good to see the city putting some focus in on that. It's good to see that there's people out there, entrepreneurs that are focusing on that to make and recognizing that need for affordable living. What the term affordable living? What does that look like?
Just what we talked
It sounds great, but what is that actually? Because there's still building costs. There's still costs built into all this that.
And that's my point. 200,000. I give you full Monty. I actually there's a place out in Indy that does prefabs. So when I talk about my research or something that's dearest to me, I'm literally been down at this factory. I've got notes on it. I've talked about it. So I start to finish. I was thinking, hey, if we could build some homes for 150, we'd be in there. Hey, talk to them. We scaled it down. They could actually do it, but 150 to 180. But then by the time you hook up everything and you bring in all the people that it takes to get it back down, you back up to that 200 mark. And again, so affordable living, you think about it, $40,000 in Fort Wayne, some years ago, that was a good income. You can live not in Sycamore or anywhere, but you can have you a nice home and have a nice, quality life. Now I had a young lady came up to me. That's what she was making, about 40. I did a presentation at a church, and a lender, she had got approved for about 110,000, and she said, "Hey, the pastor told me to come talk to you, JJ." She said, they only approved me for 110. So she told me she was 40,000. Credit was stellar at 800 and everything. Actually, she didn't tell me her income. She told me her credit was 800. She didn't know anything. And so then I asked the magical question, what do you make annually? She said 40. I said, well, yeah, that's the neighborhood you'd be in. And that's the part. When I look at people, got to look people in the eyes and just, that frustration. Because at the end of the day, anything for 100,000 or 150, if you find it, it's probably going to be a fixer-upper. Mm-hmm. And it's probably, when you talk about forced being to live somewhere, it's not going to be out, somewhere. It's going to be somewhere.
It's not where you want to live. You're being forced into a specific location for the value of the home.
There you go.
Interesting. I bought my first house when I was early 20s for like $114,000. I lived there for 13 or 14 years. When I went to sell it, I sold it for like 127. It went up like 15 grand in 13 years, right? Shortly after I bought my new house now, which I thought I overpaid for at the time, that turned out to be the best investment I ever made, right? Because property value shot up so high to the point that the house I sold that only went up 15 grand in maybe 13 years. My guess is it was probably selling for well over 200,000, probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years after that, right? Just it's shocking how high prices have gone up, and everybody thinks that the market went overvalued when in all reality we were just undervalued for way too long, right? My house should have gone up way more than 15,000 in 13 years just by natural inflation on property, right? But now we're kind of holding steady, unfortunately, because property values are a lot higher. It's going to be a lot harder, especially for younger folks or those that aren't making the income to get into home ownership, and then add the interest rates where they're at now on top of that.
Correct.
Right, compared to what they were a couple of years ago when they were holding steady in the low threes for many, many years. Right now we're back to 7.5. JJ could probably speak to that more than I can, but 7.5 rate, which makes that a lot higher payment.
But I was going to say, to that picture that you painted, like you said, you were younger, you bought your first house. Mm-hmm. What's happening right now? Everything that you just talked about with the higher interest rate, and the reason you were able to buy your first house, I'm sure there was probably a couple that lived in there. They're ready for their second home, open it up for you to buy that first home. Now with the state of where our economy is and the rates, it's like, hey, why would I move somewhere and pay this higher rate? I'm gonna stay in this home at my 2.5%, 3%, and pull out some equity if I want to do some improvements or updates versus go buy something expensive. So now when young Ryan comes out of college, that
house
home
isn't
isn't available anymore.
Or young Callan.
Young
Kellen, I
Kellen.
was gonna say,
Yeah.
he's next. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a long jail. Yes.
Yeah. And I have no clue of what rental rates are going for now. But,
Oh, they are
for
hitting
many,
people
many
over the
years,
head.
it's like you can buy a house and your payment's way cheaper than it is to rent. Why would you rent when you could own and you have it and you're building up equity in it? But nowadays, with the way interest rates are and the payments are so much higher there, I don't know, but my assumption is like renting is probably about equal to what that payment is. Still better to own, but I can see why a lot more people might rent until maybe the things decrease or rates go down or something like that.
But that's just it. The rental payments have went up the same as the mortgage payments.
That is still up there?
That's what. Yes, everybody understands the state that people are in. So yeah.
Awesome. So, well, we're out of time for today, but great conversation. I appreciate, understanding a little bit more about the holiday Juneteenth, what we're celebrating today. But gentlemen, got anything to add before we get out of here?
I just to echo Chris's sentiments. When you talk about all our communities being strong, there's an adage that I use even as a coach. You're only as strong as your weakest link. When I talk about our community, you're only as strong as your weakest community.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah, absolutely. We got a whole side of town here. We can revitalize, home ownership, businesses, things like that, which will only make the entire city, flourish, right? Yep. So, well, gentlemen, great conversation. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks. Until then, our neutral voices. Peace.